Ocean Spirit 05 is here for 3 months. Really love to hear my perspective. You're always so cautious on your opinions. Really inspirational. Thank you, my dude. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'd say, like, cautious, maybe not the word I'd use to describe my opinions myself. The world is so divided on so many things. It's always easy to find friction and argument, and I feel like there's not enough listening to one another and giving respect to different ideas, and so I just try and, like, understand stuff more. In doing that, I realized that a lot of the world is not really wrong and right. It's so much more about perspective. And so we can learn from one another if we share those perspectives. Because reality itself, like, to be described, doesn't really fit into concepts like wrong and right. It's like atoms and photons and nuclei, like, whizzing around in all this mind-boggling physics that, you know, we're still trying to figure out. That's what reality is. So, like, the reality that we talk about with one another, about this thing being wrong, that thing being right, it should be this way, it should be that way, doesn't really quantify into actual reality. And it's so much more about, like, one's own experiences and ideals, and when we don't listen to one another, we don't get to understand one another better and, like, see the reasoning behind someone who has a different opinion to you. Even on stuff that's, like, really, air quotes, controversial or hot topic, there's just too much deliberately pushing away from one another, I think. And it's because we're getting, like, further polarized, which can be frustrating, but you know, we can also, in the face of that, don't be polarized as well. Because I'm basically, you know, quite naturally inclined to be a lefty, but I really get sick of seeing on Reddit, because I browse Reddit every day, I'm sick of seeing people slam dunk on people who are dying of COVID who denied it, like who were saying it weren't a big deal and they don't want to get a vaccine. It really upsets me that people are slam dunking on them. These people are dying, and the whole situation is awful and horrible, but, like, why use that to slam dunk on someone? It really upsets me. And it's because of the polarization, right? And when you're in one camp, you tend to just think of everything on your side as right and all these things happening as backing up your opinion. It's like people's deaths are sort of being framed as, look at me, I was right about the vaccine, you know? It makes me sad to see that. And like, what I'm saying is, although I lean in this direction, it exists in both sides. Neither side is, like, immune to thinking and feeling this way and getting sucked into this whole mess. Ugh. Wow, I read a message in chat I don't really know how to respond to. I'd rather die of COVID than the vax. I mean, no one wants to die. You know, chances are you've had a very different information diet to me then about the vaccine, because I am vaccinated and for the most part encourage people to get it. I do not believe there is any kind of conspiracy, anything dodgy going on. I believe it's a response to a situation, and one that I knew about before it happened. I used to be young and ignorant, and when the swine flu went around, I was like, BBC, you know, scaremongering, fear-mongering, it's all rubbish, there's nothing to worry about. As I got older, I got more and more curious in learning and spent a lot of time, thanks to YouTube, like in their educational space, watching explainer videos, learning about, just being fascinated by anything. One of the things a few years back that I got interested in was virology, learning about pandemics and epidemics and people who were actually warning that something like coronavirus would be the biggest threat to humanity, and that it was something that needed to have the alarm sounded on and sorted out. And then when it came around this time, when all of a sudden there were fears of it, I had such a different reaction. I was like, I've learned about people warning us that something like this is going to happen. I don't think it's fear-mongering now. I feel like, wait, this is everything I've been learning about, and it's happening. And that was like years before, you know, like 2018. I watched a documentary, I think with Hannah Fry, where they literally, like, went through a pandemic scenario that almost, like, echoed and mirrored everything we've been through over the last couple of years. Well, couple of years, you know, since it started. And so I came into this whole situation with a far more educated perspective on what was going to happen than I think most people were. And that leads to a lot of, like, it's easy to distrust when you're ignorant to something. And there's nothing wrong with being ignorant either, which is, like, it's not a crime to be ignorant. You're born ignorant, and then you're going to learn stuff in life. Cool, yeah, I just came into this, like, already knowing about it, so it wasn't a shock. There wasn't that much uncertainty. When they started talking about all these different metrics of measurement and how things spread and, like, all the different terminology, I already understood it. It was weird. I was actually, if anything, watching the BBC and thinking, like, you're not really doing a great job of explaining this, because they have to kind of dumb things down, which kind of irritates me a bit. The mainstream media tends to dumb down a lot of these topics. When you watch explainer videos, documentaries that go deep on this stuff. They go deep on it, right? And then when it's like a national emergency and all this stuff's happening, there isn't really, at least it seems to me, like a big effort to actually explain. It's more like, here's what you're going to do, go along with this. And I can understand why people then get skeptical about this stuff, because you're sort of told more to follow along than you are to understand all the ins and outs of what are quite difficult and dense topics to break down, you know, immunology and viruses and all this crazy stuff. Scorby Love, thank you for the cheers and bits. People in my family have gotten the shot and had bad reactions for it. I take 2 meds and other things differently, so I'm hesitant to get it. I caught C19 in Jan, and honestly I think the 2 times I got the flu was worse. Yeah, that's cool, dude. Like, the thing is, your experience, you got to remember, is anecdotal. So it's just individual, and the fact that other people have gotten the shot and had bad reactions to it in your family is not necessarily a bad thing. Having a bad reaction to the vaccine shot potentially shows that it's doing what it's supposed to do. It's a sign that it's actually activated your body's immune response, because getting the shot and then having a reaction to it, the reaction is your immune system kicking in and doing something. So a negative reaction to getting a shot can be a good sign that things are going right. When I originally read your message, I was thinking you were saying in your family you had like, well, I guess you can flip it either way. So like when you say bad reaction, I mean, if it's like, if we're talking hospitalized, really bad reaction, and to multiple people in your family, that could also signify that it's something genetic, right? That actually you might be genetically disposed to this, because there's no guarantee that everyone's going to be unharmed. And we understand that through using these things that unfortunately there are going to be a small minority, and the efficacy is that it's a very small minority of people that get caught out by these things and do unfortunately have bad responses and it doesn't work for them. But the thing is, the benefit to society as a whole is absolutely massive. And so there is that number call. It's like the, you know, the split train track, right? Where do you pull the lever and save 5 people, or do you leave it alone and kill 1 person? And it's kind of playing the game like that. So as for your hesitancy, you know, if it's a case of like a really bad hospitalized reaction, that's something you should be talking to your doctor about. If it's just generally getting sick and under the weather and it being a bit tough as a response, then maybe not something to be so hesitant about, because that's a sign that the body's immune system is actually going to work and doing something. I mean, technically you could maybe say if someone had no reaction at all, it might mean that it was ineffective on them. So sometimes this stuff, like the logic of it can be really quite tricky to get your head around. But yeah, I mean, being hesitant is fine. You know, you want to find some like good information. It's hard to know where to point you to. I think a lot of the immunology, whatever the word is, stuff that I watched was part of a Vox Explainer series. I think it was on Netflix as well from like years back, but I don't remember the specifics. I feel like maybe sometimes I should just like write this stuff down and have a journal of where did I learn things from, so I can sort of pass it on. What was the other point to what I was just saying a minute ago? Things being anecdotal, right? Like if you know someone who has like a severe reaction to the vaccine, there will be people that have that, but like your anecdotal individual experience is not evidence of a trend. That's why they have to use data so much. And then unfortunately people get skeptical and miffed about the data that's being used, and I think people's skepticism shouldn't be like responded to with anger or whatnot, which is what I see a lot of online. People slam dunking, having a go at for people for being hesitant or unsure. That stuff's just not helpful. I think it's fine. This is like a really unusual situation for all of us, and rather than people being mean to other people who are hesitant in some way, maybe we can find a way to explain stuff better and get the information across. Finaval says, I got the vax and died. It's true. Yeah, you did, didn't ya? God, you timed that message to go out. You knew. Synax says, some people have got heart inflammation, myocarditis, and have died. Yeah, there is truth. And that stuff shouldn't be hidden away or shied from. That is sadly the price to pay for the vaccines, is that, you know, the idea is that the number is going to be incredibly small overall. It's going to be like 0.001%. I don't know the exacts, but it is a call that had to be made, and why these things are like produced under such rigorous examination, right, is because we have to get it right to keep that down to a minimum. And if someone wants to make the argument that if one person dies, like, you should never do that, it's kind of absurd when you put it into another context of like, should everyone drive, should the legal speed limit be 5 miles an hour so we can guarantee no one ever dies of road accidents, right? Who's going to agree to that? Because like people are dying from COVID, people are dying from car accidents all the time. And when you frame the idea differently, all of a sudden it's, would you sign up for that if you really believe that we shouldn't have a vaccine, no one should die from a vaccine? Alright, are you gonna drive everywhere at 3 miles an hour to make sure no one dies from car accidents, right? Like these things, these ideas get like normalized and obscured in our minds in strange ways. Because it's, in a way, it's kind of the same. It's something we're all doing collectively, that people, the benefit of being able to drive and commute like that means that some people will unfortunately lose their lives. And yet we set rules, we set ideas around it where, okay, this speed is okay. And with this speed, with these traffic rules that we've agreed upon, X amount of people die every year from this. And that number is sort of agreed on without thought. And then all of a sudden something like a vaccine comes along and it's all more upfront and apparent, but you might not think about how that contract, that idea already exists with something like traffic, right? It's already there. Who's understanding me on this whole traffic idea? Because it's so true. There are like contractual agreements in society where we participate and play along with that you don't even think about. Never thought about like agreeing to drive to the rules. Passing your test and going on the road legally is you agreeing to that rule system. That rule system factors into people dying. So if the rules were like, okay, everyone's got to drive slower so we can save lives, that's kind of like what a vaccine is. We're all going to do this to save lives. It's fascinating. No shoes, no shirt, no service. Yeah, seatbelts is another one that comes up. And this is like some of the examples that I'm saying, like the seatbelt one, like is the kind of thing that comes up on Twitter, where you see on Reddit people are sharing the old slam dunking. This stuff should never be like used as a slam dunk. Invite people in to think this way and think about and see things differently. Don't play the slam dunk thing, because you just immediately undermine your own point of view. I see people doing it with like, someone's going, oh, it's my freedom not to get a vaccine and all this, and then someone else is like, oh, well, are you free not to wear a seatbelt? Ah, oh, slam dunk. And it's like, well, that doesn't achieve anything. No one likes being slam dunked on. No one likes being told they're wrong. You know, there could be potential for quite a thoughtful conversation if you are to say, you know, you might frame this in the context of it being about freedom, yet I don't see that you're seeing other things in that same light, like wearing seatbelts. That is just a normalized thing. We just kind of all get on with it and wear seatbelts now. Ironically, when they first tried to introduce seatbelts, there was people that were against it, talking about freedom. Same way there was in the influenza pandemic of 1918. There were anti-maskers then. Like the same things keep happening. History repeats itself. It's crazy.